Civil Media.
Memorial Center of the Jews of Macedonia, I would like to welcome you to our round table titled Combating Antisemitism and Holocaust Distortion. This event is a part of the commemoration of the January 27th, the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it is organized in cooperation with the Austrian Embassy in Macedonia. Today we remember the tragic events, and there is no better place for this event than here at the institution that cherishes the memory of 7,144 Macedonian Jews that perished in the Holocaust. Yet, as Ban Ki-moon suggested, we must also go beyond remembrance and make sure that new generations know this history. We must apply the lessons of the Holocaust to today's world. Holocaust denial is discourse and propaganda that deny the historical reality and the extent of the extermination of the Jews by the Nazis and their accomplices during World War II, known as the Holocaust or the Shoah. Holocaust denial refers specifically to any attempt to claim that the Holocaust did not take place. We should have in mind that denial and distortion of history is an assault on truth and understanding. Comprehension and memory of the past are crucial to how we understand ourselves, our society, and our goals for the future. Intentionally denying or distorting the historical records threaten communal understanding of how to safeguard democracy and individual rights. Having this in mind, today we are organizing this roundtable to address the issues at hand. In that respect, we are going to have two panels today, and on our first panel is more focused to our diplomats and our friends that are gathered today with us to discuss this outstanding issue. And in that respect, I have a great honor and pleasure to welcome a number of distinguished diplomats serving in Skopje and also that used to serve in Skopje. And in that sense, the Honorable Special Envoy of the Republic of Austria to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, Tомас Мајкл Бајер, who also served as an Austrian ambassador to Macedonia, and he is a famous Austrian career diplomat. The Honorable Head of the Delegation of the Republic of Macedonia to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, Ambassador Јован Теговски, also the Ambassador of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Reјčel Galoveј, and we have also the representative of the Institute for Preservation of Holocaust in Bulgaria, Honorable Beta Haralanova. Okay, I would like to, on behalf of the organizers, the Holocaust Fund of Macedonia and the Austrian Embassy, to welcome you to this event and also to invite our key speaker for today, Honorable Ambassador Tомас Мајкл Бајер, to address you on this occasion. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Dobar den za vas. I'm very happy to be back. I really enjoy to come here to this very famous Holocaust Memorial Museum, where we had many similar events, and I'm really happy to be here again. Mr. Chairman, you started by defining Holocaust distortion, which is a very good start, so maybe I may now define what antisemitism is, as I will explain to you why I do this. Antisemitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of antisemitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Now, this definition was done by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, which I represent here today, and it also is the basis of the first declaration of the European Council on antisemitism, which was negotiated under the Austrian chairmanship in the second half of last year. And as I was part of this negotiating team, I can tell you it was not easy to negotiate it. So, and this declaration it was not by happenstance that we did it under the Austrian presidency, but we did it parallel to the Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union, which at the same time issued their second survey on discrimination and hate crimes against Jews. And maybe I can quote a few events and a few statements, a few analyses out of this survey, which many of you, of course, have read. It says about 90% of respondents feel that anti-Semitism is growing in their country. Around 90% also feel it is particularly problematic online, while about 70% cite public spaces, the media, and politics as common sources of anti-Semitism. Almost 30% have been harassed, with those being visibly Jewish most affected. Now, personally, I don't like this word, visibly Jewish. It's a very general aspect, and I feel one should have chosen a more personal aspect. You've seen in the definition it is different. We rather like to say against people who are the assaultants perceive as Jews. I will come to that later because this is the big question about what is anti-Semitism in all. Now, what else does this survey say? Anti-Semitism appears to be so deep-rooted in society that regular harassment has become part of their normal everyday life. Almost 80% do not report serious incidents to the police or any other body. Often this is because they feel nothing will change. And over a third avoid taking part in Jewish events or visiting Jewish sites because they fear for their safety and feel insecure. The same proportion also have even considered emigrating. Now, such results are really very alarming, and we in the IHRA feel that, according to our basic document, the Stockholm Declaration, we have a real responsibility to counteract. We have the advantage that we are an institution which combines government envoyees and experts. So, you know, if we try a political strive towards some goal, politicians and even diplomats are rather hesitant and say, look, how that might affect our bilateral relations. We have to think on all aspects. The experts are quite different, and I'm very happy to have them. Goran is one of these experts, of course, and many others. They can consider the real problem, and then they have the possibility, according to our rules, to directly address the chair and say, look, this is something in this country that doesn't work. And if the chair is a brave chair, and we had very brave chairs in the past, then he writes a letter to the government. And then things starts rolling. Then we have the discussions, the negotiations. We had setbacks, but we had some successes as well. So the IHRA has a political activity and a political role which shows that strengthening the Holocaust is not only that combating Holocaust is not only done by strengthening education, but also by taking political steps. Of course, we have the three big pillars: the education, the remembrance, and the scientific approach. But we also have a political aim, and we have a political mandate. So now let me a little turn to the situation in my own country, because these alarming results that we just heard from the fundamental rights agencies, unfortunately, are quite reflected in our country. We have, in the past years, really registered an increasing number of anti-Semitic events, even bashing of persons, direct assaults, but most of them in the public media. And then again, and that is the sad truth, the social media are being increasingly instrumentalized, not only for anti-Semitic, but for any anonymous approach that we can call racist, extremist. It goes, again, it's used as an expression for xenophobia, of course now, and this is a European illness against immigrants and so on. And you know that the social media are very difficult to control, to detect, and they also bring people away from the traditional media for the simple reason that it is much easier to turn on the computer than to go to the shop to buy a newspaper. Newspapers are getting more and more expensive, or to buy them online, which is also not free. So this is something the Austrian journalists publicly stated is their big problem, because they have to survive, and for that they need money. And if they don't get it, they cannot work. And the social media have the funds, and they have them from extremist circles, even from extremist circles that are now enshrined in parties, some of them in parliament, and some of them, unfortunately, even in governments. So this is the problem we are facing, and that is why the IHRA is something in between, where we can be a little more direct than even the governments we represent. And I hope we can go on. We have the plan to hold a meeting on high level in 2020, 20 years after the so-called Stockholm Declaration, and we hope that our heads of states and governments will have the courage to go beyond the Stockholm Declaration and address the present problems that are connected with anti-Semitism, Holocaust distortion, and what we can learn from the Holocaust when addressing all the other matters of xenophobia and extremism. If I still have time, I would like to say a few words about the roots of anti-Semitism in Austria. Why? Because they are specific for, let's say, the whole events in Europe. You know that the traditional anti-Semitism was directed from the Christian side. It was in Europe, it was the Catholic Church, in Austria especially, but it was also the Protestant Church. We know we celebrated 2 years ago the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, and many Protestant high-level members of the clergy stated and even apologized for what Martin Luther said about the Jews. And I don't have to say anything about the Catholics. We know the events in Spain. You can see them here in the museum because they have a direct influence on the Sephardic Jews and why they came to the Balkans. I don't know much about the Orthodox Church. Maybe I can learn something from you, how they behaved towards the Jews. But in Austria, something happened. The Habsburg dynasty, first of all, released a law to protect the Jews in the time of Joseph II, the son of Mary Theresia, which gave the Jews a comparatively high degree of protection, but again, of course, isolated them. And the second step was that the Habsburg monarchy and the Habsburg court and the system recognized every Jew who got baptized. And immediately after you were baptized, you were a complete member of the Christian family, and you could attain the highest jobs. A good example is the Austrian composer Gustav Mahler, who was born of a Jewish family in today's Czech Republic. He was baptized because he wanted to become director of the Vienna Opera, one of the highest posts you can get. Now, this happened, and there were a lot of Jews who were baptized, and there were many Jews who were not baptized, but who refused their own religion. They were liberals, they just wanted to live peacefully in a liberal society. And then there was the mayor of Vienna, who was a founding member of the Austrian Christ Democrats, you can say, called Lueger, and he was a radical anti-Semite, and he joined forces with other theoreticians who devised the plan of the racial anti-Semitism. He said, I cannot tolerate that the emperor has Jews baptized and they are running our hospitals, our universities. This is impossible. I say who is a Jew and not he. And he developed a racial plan which somehow became the basis of the later Nuremberg laws. So you can define a Jew by the Jewish religion, which means a Jew is born by a Jewish mother. You can define it by the traditional feeling that they still feel to be a Jew, but they don't want, they reject the religion. But the racism was born in Austria in that time, and this is the perception that, from my childhood and experience, is still there. If somebody is a Christian, he's still a Jew, and then I ask him why. Oh, he's half a Jew, which is a Nazi expression. It's not. Yeah, because his father was Jewish. I said, look, if his father was Jewish, he's not a Jew. What about that? So. And most of these people don't even know Jews. They never saw a Jew, they never met a Jew. So this is the problem we are facing. It's very complex, and I don't have the time to go into that, but maybe we can do it in the discussions. We had to, when we devised this anti-Semitism definition, of course, give some guidance. And the guidance, we have many paragraphs where we try to explain what is anti-Semitism, what is not. One of these paragraphs deals with the problem of Israel. What is anti-Zionism, what is anti-Semitism? Why is every anti-Zionist not automatically an anti-Semite and so on? This, of course, caused the problems that let us fail the adoption. Because you can remember, I don't have to go into this, but it was very clear. It was very complicated. We finally sought the compromise that we said the definition which I read to you now is what we adopt, of course, which is the definition. It's a working definition anyway, it's not legally binding. And the rest of it is guidance for those who implement it. And with this we passed. And fortunately we also passed it in the Council of Europe, and in the Council of the European Union. A year before it was passed by the European Parliament, and many countries, about 11, have now adopted it, among them also Bulgaria, also Macedonia, Great Britain, Austria, many others, and we hope for more adoptions, which means, of course, this is not legally binding because the whole IHRA is not legally binding, but it means you have to use it and you can use it for education, not only for schools, but also for educating executive officers in the police, which is very important, and judges. You cannot imagine what ideas some state attorneys and judges have on dealing with Holocaust discussion and anti-Semitism. Of course, the situation is different in different countries because some countries have binding laws to counter Holocaust discussion, as Austria or Germany or France, and others, especially in the Anglo-American room, have no such laws because they say the law of the principle of freedom of expression is the highest, and you cannot. So you can officially talk about Holocaust distortion in America, you will not be persecuted. But once you come to Austria, you might be persecuted. So I think I stop here, but please, we can deepen this in other discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tomas Maјkl Bајер, for your valuable observations about the historical retrospective of the anti-Semitic developments in Austria, and also in particular I enjoyed your observations on the role of the new technologies play in promotion of anti-Semitism, and I think that this is very relevant for Macedonia as well. And in that respect, let me remind you that Macedonia is also a partner within the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. We have been observer country for quite some time, and we hope to advance our membership there in the period to come. And in that respect, I also have a privilege to welcome our head of delegation, head of the Macedonian delegation to IHRA, to address you on this occasion and to reflect on the current developments in Macedonia in terms of anti-Semitism and distortion of history.
Thank you, Chair. Respected Director of the Holocaust, of the Board of the Holocaust Fund for the Jews of Macedonia, Mr. Mladenoski, Your Excellencies, respected representatives of the government of the Republic of Macedonia, of the civil society, of the academia and media. It is a great honor and privilege for me to address you on this occasion. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Austria to the Republic of Macedonia, Ms. Renate Kobler, and the Director of the Holocaust Memorial Center, Goran Sadicario, for their joint initiative to organize this round table on a subject of a very important, I would say, of particular importance. Subject that concerns not only the Jews, but all of us. Subject that may not always be on the top of the national priorities, but needs continuous attention and undertaking timely measures. Reflecting on the global resurgence of anti-Semitism, Nobel Peace Laureate Elie Wiesel some 10 years ago said, "May I share with you the feeling of urgency, if not emergency, that we believe anti-Semitism represents and calls for. I must confess to you, I have not felt the way I felt now since 1945. I felt there are reasons for us to be concerned, even afraid. Now it is time to mobilize the effort of all humanity." Those words are very much valid and actual today. We are witnessing an increasing anti-Semitism, not only in its traditional forms, but also in new, sophisticated, virulent, and even lethal forms, as were the last year's deadly attacks in the Petersburg synagogue. Anti-Semitism that, through the internet and social networks, became a global phenomenon. We are facing with a very serious problem that is not only Jewish, but a global one, as the anti-Semitic incidents are challenging the democratic values of our societies. Allow me to reflect on the activities in the Republic of Macedonia in the fight against anti-Semitism and, I would say, Holocaust denial and distortion. The government of the Republic of Macedonia honors the obligation it has assumed under 2000 Stockholm Declaration and pays special attention to all aspects related to the Holocaust, such as the education, remembers, research, with the young generation in our focus, and with the main idea that the prevention through education of educators and students is the best remedy for many illnesses. Although the Jewish community in my country is relatively small in numbers and consequently the public expressions of anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic incidents are relatively rare, the government is firmly committed to combat anti-Semitism and Holocaust distortion and denial, as well as all forms of discrimination, hate speech, and other forms of human rights violation. And what I want to underline in this is the excellent cooperation we have with the Jewish community and the Holocaust Memorial Center. To illustrate this commitment, I would just like to mention several concrete examples. I will start with the commemorative events on the occasion of 75 years since the deportation of the Jews from Macedonia, held under the auspices of the Prime Minister of the Republic of Macedonia, His Excellency Zoran Zaev, that took place last year on 11 and 12 of March in Skopje, Bitola, and Štip. I'm mentioning these events because of several reasons. They were held under the auspices of the Prime Minister of the Republic of Macedonia. We have had a first historic visit of the Bulgarian Prime Minister Bojko Borisov, who together with Prime Minister Zaev participated at the March of Living and addressed the commemorative ceremony in front of the monument of the Holocaust victims. We have understand this as a very important message, not only as taking assuming the responsibility for the Holocaust, for the deportation of Macedonian Jews, but also a message of the both governments to fight anti-Semitism. On this occasion, I would like to mention that two very important documents were adopted. Declaration of the Assembly of the Republic of Macedonia, which, among other things, condemns the Holocaust, Holocaust denial and distortion, as well as all shapes of genocide and violation of human rights, and calls upon the institution of the government, the academy, science and education institution, media, NGOs, and public officials to fight against these evils. The second document was the adoption by the government of the Republic of Macedonia of the IHRA working definition on anti-Semitism that was already mentioned, thus respecting the recommendation of the European Parliament resolution and IHRA, although we are not EU member country, neither an IHRA member. The other example that I would like to mention is the initiative of the Jewish community to amend the penal code of the Republic of Macedonia that was supported by the government of Macedonia and which means to make amendments in the penal code in three main areas: prohibiting the usage of national socialist symbols, negation of the Holocaust, and spreading out of anti-Semitism. And I do believe that this, I would say, second goal to amend the denial of the Holocaust should be maybe may also include in the final version the Holocaust distortion. The initiative has been approved by the Working Group for Reforms of the Penal Code and now is in a governmental procedure. I would like just to end with the big regional conference responding to anti-Semitic hate crimes and addressing the security needs of the Jewish community that was organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and OSCE, Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, in partnership with the Jewish community and OSCE mission in Skopje, that had gathered more than 50 law enforcement officials from the Ministries of Interior, Ministry of Justice, and Jewish communities from Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Montenegro, Serbia, Slovenia, and the Republic of Macedonia. I will stop here. There are some other examples, but maybe we will have the opportunity to mention in the discussion. And with another quote by the late United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan, who said, "The rise of antisemitism anywhere is a threat to people everywhere. Thus, in fighting antisemitism, we fight for the future of all humanity." Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tegovski. It was very interesting to see your input on the current developments of the activities of both the Republic of Macedonia and the Holocaust Fund and the Jewish community in terms of prevention of antisemitism in public discourse of our country. Having in mind that we lost over 98% of the Jewish population of Macedonia in the Holocaust, the issue of education and work with the new generations is more important. And in that sense, our next panelist comes from the United Kingdom, a very active member of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And I would like to invite our Honorable Ambassador to address you on this occasion.
Thank you. Ambassador Baier, Ambassador Tegovski, Ms. Harlanova, diplomats, associates, members of the civil society and the media. I'll start by thanking Goran Sadicario and the team of the Holocaust Memorial Centre, as well as the Jewish community here in Macedonia, for organising this event today. Over the weekend, the British Holocaust Memorial Trust released survey results that showed that among British adults, 1 in 20 don't believe that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Why? Why do people no longer believe the recorded facts? And I see two separate issues that have come together dangerously and insidiously. The first is the news environment in which we now live, access to information from multiple sources shouting for attention without filters or analysis, or the sources to help us to tell fact from fiction, or to tell innocent mistake from deliberate distortion. The second thing, as the ambassador also mentioned, is the radicalization in the political sphere. In different formats and structures, we're seeing the rise of the far left and the rise of the far right, for whom the language of anti-Semitism has never been far away. The Jewish people, historically othered, blamed for the perceived failures of the system. So, how does it feel as a European Jew talking in this museum, telling this story? So, in December, I celebrated my first Hanukkah in Macedonia. I've celebrated it in lots of places. The strongest memories are from my large Jewish community in the north of England. There was a giant menorah, which is the candelabra, in the streets, in the main town square, and in the windows of people's houses. So, I told my team here I'd write a blog about it for International Human Rights Day, because they happened to coincide last year. And then I changed my mind, and what went through my head was, I didn't want my Hanukkah celebration on display. I didn't know where the blog would go online, and I didn't know who would respond or how they would respond. Then, on the first night of Hanukkah, I told my children the story. And you tell them, we were occupied, we were not allowed to practice our religion, so now we light the candles and we light them publicly to show we're no longer afraid. I didn't tell them, because they're too little to know about the horrors, that they lit the candles in the concentration camps using the last of their rations, because as the late Rabbi Hugo Grinn's father told him in Auschwitz, you can live 3 days without water, but you cannot live for 3 minutes without hope. And I was ashamed, so I lit my candles and I displayed them for the world. So what do we do? How do we tackle this distortion of the truth and the rising fear? Well, to start, it's some of the things that have been mentioned here. We can ensure the education of our youth on history and its relevance. We can find ways to strengthen the media to ensure that it's fact-based and analytical, to ensure people understand what they are accessing and where it comes from. We can challenge negative and false narratives and do so again and again whenever they rise up. And we also have to be innovative. We don't yet have the answers on how to tackle the rise of fake news, so we have to work together to find ways to engage, counter, and drive the agenda. And we must be brave. As individuals, we must speak out even when it's hard. We must act even when it's difficult. So last week, my Foreign Secretary unveiled a statue of Frank Foley. He was an administrator during World War II in our consulate in Berlin. He broke the visa rules, allowing thousands of Jewish people to escape Germany. His courage in action is a powerful lesson. But as the Foreign Secretary said when unveiling Foley's statue, as we take pride in the memory of Frank Foley, we should never lose sight of the hard truth that when the crucial moment came and the moral test was posed, there were too few people like him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Галовеј, and your personal story was very impressive. When I work with my students, I always tend to include personal stories of people in order to better convey the message, and this was very nice. Thank you once again for your input in the discussion. And now, last but not the least, we come to the last panelist of the first panel, and in that respect, I must emphasize that Macedonia and Bulgaria have made a huge progress in the last year, and one of the fields that we have been working on was the issue of the Holocaust and the remembrance of the Jews of Macedonia that lost their lives in the World War II. And in that sense, we are really happy to welcome a distinguished representative of the Institute for Preservation of Holocaust in Bulgaria, Ms. Haralанова, who will address you in Bulgarian on this occasion.
There is a translation.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So there is also a translation of
If
the...
anyone needs translation, you can provide.
Уважаеми Ваше Превъзходителство, уважаеми дами и господа, разрешете ми от името на Организацията на евреите в България Шалом да благодаря за поканата за това участие и специално на Горан. Института, за който вие чухте, е създаден само преди няколко месеца. Основната цел е да събираме данни, да съхраняваме и популяризираме фактите от времето, когато в България бяха спасени 48 000 евреи, но за съжаление в Македония, Тракия и Пирот бяха депортирани 11 343 евреи. И те никога не се завърнаха в своята родина. Затова считам, че днешното участие ще бъде един полезен урок за нашето сътрудничество, за нашите бъдещи действия и най-вече срещу нарастващия се антисемитизъм, срещу проявите, които в България все повече и повече работим по тези въпроси, така както и ролята за изопачаване значението на Холокоста. Само преди ден, на 27 януари, Европа отбеляза Международния възпоменателен ден на Холокоста. Този ден се почети и от цялата еврейска общност в България, от политическия елит и от много обществени организации в различни училища в страната. Всички ние се присъединихме и към призива и инициативата на Световния еврейски конгрес и със снимки казахме: ние помним. Ние изпратихме тези снимки и вчера всички те бяха прожектирани, за да докажем, че ние наистина помним и никога няма да забравим това, което се беше случило в България преди 75 години. една година отбелязахме 75 години от спасението на българските евреи. За първи път министър-председател на страната Бойко Борисов почети паметта на загиналите македонски евреи и положи цветя пред паметника им тук в Скопие. Във връзка с 75 годишнината се проведаха различни по своя характер срещи, научни конференции, изложби, ученически конкурси. В Народното събрание, както и в различни градове, бе представена книгата «75 години незабравените лица на спасението». И всичко това доказва, че темата за Холокоста е неизчерпаема, че все още има непроучени материали. Знаем, че въпросът за спасението на българските евреи не е само български, а той има и международен отзвук. Знаем, че и с работата по спасението на българските евреи отговаряме дали е имало Холокост, дали той съществува и дали трябва да се борим срещу дезинформацията днес. Многостранната дейност за съхранение паметта на Холокоста на България бе призната от Международния алианс за възпоменание на Холокоста, който на 28 ноември 2018 година прие България за 32-и пълноправен член на Международния алианс. И аз се надявам, че скоро време и Македония ще бъде приета в този алианс. И така България стана част от престижното семейство на страните, поели ангажимент да са насърчаване изучаването и възпоменанието на Холокоста, да се включат в организиране на борбата с антисемитизма и да отстояват принципите на декларацията от Стокхолм 2000 година. Но освен въпроса за антисемитизма, трагедията Холокост е тема, която също намира отзвук и до ден днешен. Въпреки всички доказателства, въпреки болезнените истории на хора, тук музеен мемориален комплекс на Холокоста е доказателство за това. Въпреки с многото снимки, които се съхраняват в архивите, в музеите, в хората, знайте, че истинността на този мрачен период е поставена под съмнение от така наречените историци-ревизионисти. И тук искам да цитирам председателя на ОЕБ Шалом България, доцент доктор Алек Оскар, който казва: призракът на Холокоста днес е видим повече от всякога, може би не под същата форма, но използвайки същите похвати на безочлива пропаганда, дезинформация и фалшифициране на историята. Една от възможностите за дезинформация, за фалшифициране на историята се оказват интернет страниците. И ние не трябва да оставяме тази възможност да се разширява. Ние трябва да спрем този език на омразата. Ние трябва да се борим срещу антисемитизма, срещу всички тези интернета анонимни потребители, които крият своята самоличност, но не и своите грозни намерения. Аз съм историк, занимавам се с историята на евреите. За съжаление, разбирам английски, но не говоря английски. И виждам и знам, че антисемитизма в България се проявява много по-рано. През 30-те години имало в България антисемитизъм, но през своето начало неговите прояви са били слаби. Нямало е фашизъм, нямало е национал-социализъм. Когато се появяват фашистските партии в страната, когато се разпространяват идеите на национал-социализма, тогава и антисемитските призиви на германските национал-социалисти се разрастват. Тогава именно се засилва и проявлението по време на Закона за защита на нацията, приет през 1940 година. Знаете, че този факт, може би не всички знаят, се оспорва, като може да, които хора искат да докажат, че е нямало антисемитизъм по това време, хора, които не са искали и не са желали приемането на закона за защита на нацията. През март 1943 година българските власти извършват депортация на евреите от териториите с българско управление по време на войната. Това са териториите на Македонија, Тракия и Пирот. Оттам 11 343 евреи не бяха спасени. Т.е. само 13 останаха живи. Изтичането на информация относно плановете за депортация на евреите от предвоенните територии води до силна реакция на българската общественост срещу депортациите, от които те са спрени. Така на практика се спасява живота на 48 000 евреи, живеещи в територията на България. Знаете, известни са имената на Димитър Пешев, на софийски митрополит Стефан Български, на митрополит Кирин, на много адвокати, писатели, на най-обикновените личности. И ние казваме, че българското общество успява да заспаси българските евреи по това време. Аз искам накрая да спомена, че още през 1996 година германският канцлер и бивш президент споменава, че споменът не трябва да умира, той трябва да напомня на бъдещите поколения. И затова трябва да се намери подход, който е ефективен и в бъдеще. Ние трябва да помним, това е най-важният урок. Ние трябва да знаем и никога да не забравяме, да сме отговорни за нашето бъдеще и бъдещето на децата ни. Трябва да спрем езика на омразата, така както ние трябва да спрем всички, които говорят против Холокоста. А една от важните борби за това време е да спрем Луков марш, който се извършва в България всяка година. Имаме страшно много акции, имаме разговори в Министерството, имаме разговори с правителството. В наша подкрепа са стотици хиляди хора, не само в България, но и в цял свят. Но този Луков марш, за съжаление, се извършва. В България Луков марш идват и от Германия представители на неонационализма, за да участват в Луковия марш. Какво по-ясно бих казала от това да видиш как съвременният антисемитизъм се показва наяве. А ние трябва да се борим срещу това. Явно е, че езикът на омразата, ксенофобията и антисемитизма са насочени сега не само към евреите. Те атакуват милиони хора по света. И нашата задача е всеки ден с всякакви средства, но естествено мирни, да се противопоставим за гражданско, демократично, свободно общество. И в заключение бих казала, че има 3 думи. Идентичност, памет и наследство. Тези думи аз ги харесвам много, но те напомнят, че памет и история взаимно се допълват, а наследството е част от историята. Миналото никога не трябва да се забравя. Не трябва да се забравя и спасението на българските евреи. Не трябва да се забравя унищожението на тези евреи от Македония, Тракия и Пирот. Но наследството, което ни е оставено, то трябва да бъде изчистено завинаги от антисемитизма, от езика на омразата, от отричането на Холокоста. Затова смятам, че тези срещи са много полезни. Благодаря ви.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I would like to first say that it is going to be extremely difficult to say new things, to shed more light to these topics in comparison to what we've heard in the first panel. But of course, I'll do my best from my humble experience to share a few thoughts with you today. First of all, I'd like to paraphrase the German journalist Wilhelm Marr, who back in 1879 has written that anti-Semitism, hate against Jews, is usually connected to the hate or a strong opposition and even violence against other important societal movements and ideas and ideologies, such as socialism, such as trade unionism, such as different kinds of music, or Jehovah's Witnesses, and many other groups in the society. They were put in the same group of issues or groups or individuals to be hated. Actually, this very journalist, Wilhelm Marr, has created this word, according to some sources, anti-Semitism, which marks the hate against Jews. Later on, in the 20th century, a Czech-Canadian writer, Joseph Skvorecky, in his novel Bass Saxophone, is writing about the jazz music being called Jewish communist creation, and it was banned in the times of the Nazi era in Germany and elsewhere. And it was a whole basis of behavior towards this kind of music, favorizing the Dur melodies against the Moll melodies, because they are more in accordance to the healthy German spirit and the national German spirit. And this is a whole set of values that anti-Semitists, or those that we call people that abuse the freedom of expression in order to promote the hate speech and the violence against the different ones, is in the basis of what I would like to stress as a societal phenomena and also as a societal policy and practice of a great many different parts of the society and the politics, which means that anti-Semitism is at the same time hate against all others who are different in the perception of those that promote hate speech. Because once they speak against Jews, they will speak against socialists. They will speak against people with special needs. They will speak against LGBTI communities. They will speak against Democrats. And so they will promote hate speech against them. And from hate speech to violence, it is a very, very short path. To the contrary of the declarations of governments, we also see a widespread culture of silence, the walls of silence, and that's where those that promote hate, those that promote violence and divisions, those that promote discrimination, they will find the area, the vast area of their action, because they usually use the fear of people or the shame of people who don't want to interfere or who don't want to intervene in some areas. And that's where, those bystanders, the category of bystanders, are very important. It's exactly the mass of people where they mobilize more supporters, direct or indirect. We see the anti-Semitism and distortion of Holocaust as a basis of those extreme radical parts of the society in which the destructive anti-democratic tendencies are found. And the system, the society, and also the system have to bring more energy into combating it. The hate speech against Roma is anti-Semitism at the same time. the hate speech against LGBTI communities is anti-Semitism at the same time, and vice versa. We have to understand the link between those behaviors of different groups and individuals in the society. Otherwise, we will not have success in what we see as progressive, democratic, human rights-oriented tendencies in the society. If you look at the schools, unlike the optimism that might be shared from this place or from other places, I don't see, or being part of the organization, human rights organization that I represent, we don't see enough efforts to overcome, excuse me, but I'm known to be a very direct person, to overcome the Nazification process of Macedonia that we've seen in the last decade. We've seen a decade of promoting hate, promoting divisions in the society, within which we don't need to go very far, but to the first supermarket, you will see on the shelves a plethora of titles of books that promote Nazi ideology, that promote fascism. You will find for as low as 3.5 euros the essence of the Mein Kampf of Adolf Hitler on the shelves in a supermarket, much better distributed than any other book in the country. And it is a book that has been sold in about 6,000 copies in a very small society as Macedonia. So it's a very, very widespread textbook for the radical youth and for the radical parts of the society. And we've seen very little efforts to overcome this situation. If you go to the schools, in the primary school, kids as young as 7 or 8 years old, they know how to cross, or they know very well how to kneel according to the Islamic prayers practices. But they don't know exactly what Christian or Muslim love means. They don't know exactly what the principles of the religions that are present here in this part of Europe actually mean. They would rather be very divisive when it comes to Jews or to the Holocaust. Very often you see distortion of Holocaust like it's an exaggerated number of 6 million people. Okay, let's accept that. Let's say that there are 1 million less victims of the Holocaust. Is 5 million a little number? Is one victim a little number, enough for us to be with calm consciousnesses? One victim is too many. Not to speak about millions of people who have been killed with names and family names, with specific eyes, colors of their eyes, or specific dreams or needs, and so on. They're all gone in the era of Holocaust. So distortion or minimizing the meaning of the numbers is the first anti-Semitic or anti-Holocaust or a radical a person who is playing with numbers. I will again say, one victim is too many, not to speak about millions. And when we speak about the Holocaust, we also have to know that the regimes and their collaborators across the Europe and the world, they also go after the others, after Roma, after other minorities, after people with special needs, after people from different races and so on. And that's something that in the society which tends to be one equal for all and to be democratic, to be a society and a state that respects human rights and freedoms, must do much more and must invent ways on a long run to combat the anti-Semitism, the distortion of Holocaust, and to do much more in favor of human rights and freedoms. The education, the culture are very important. And we need to see a sincere commitment of those who create policies and practices in the country. We have to see a real sincere intention to deal with the past. Because right now we see a widespread system of prejudices against Jews, against other minorities, against vulnerable groups in the society, and against the Holocaust, the meaning of of Holocaust in the history of the humankind. And we need to see, of course, a new wave of politicians who have to prove that they are decisive in order to overcome these divisions. Of course, we have to understand that each of us in the civil society, but also in the media, have to do more every day, not only on the 27th of January, just as we need to do more about human rights and freedoms, because fight against antisemitism is the fight for human rights. And just a few lines in the internet portals, or not even, and just a few lines in the textbooks for kids, and not even, is not enough. We need to see that and we need to admit that neither media, nor civil society, nor the society in general, nor the politicians in the country do enough in this area. And I hope that it will be a different era coming now, but that will require each of us become more active in that area, and be on the everyday basis, be persons who carry the message that we need to understand first and look into ourselves first, and then promote it to the others. The education and the culture are not the only ones, of course. We need to see the parliament, we need to see the government creating modules of combating the extremists, the radical tendencies in the society. And of course, we need to understand that the progress that we are talking about so much is not possible without clearing up the recent past that we've been through, in which the autocratic, violent tendencies were our everyday life. But we need to understand the whole, the complete picture, because it's not only the trick is not to see only parts of it, but to see the whole picture and deliver new messages and deliver new ways of behavior in the politics and in the society. Of course, I can give you many more examples about how the anti-Semitism and distortion of Holocaust is part of our everyday life, and especially in the social media, where we see waves and waves of anti-Semitism, of radical ideas being spread on daily basis, not only on daily basis, every minute. Even a comment on my yesterday's column was that I'm not to be trusted because I'm only talking about anti-Semitism and Holocaust, but if I need to be trusted, I need to first say things about what the Israeli government is doing to the Palestinians. That's anti-Semitism, ladies and gentlemen. That's another form of distortion of the Holocaust. You may or you may not agree with the politics of some country, of some state, of some government, whether it's Israeli, American, Russian, or Indian government. It's something completely different. By promoting this, that I'm not to be trusted because I'm not talking about the Palestinians, that's another form of anti-Semitism. And if you look at other ways of promoting hate speech, you will see that certain groups in the society, the radical groups, they invent all sorts of prejudices that are translated into codes, into different types of sentences that not directly lead you to a conclusion, aha, this is hate speech. No, but all those that are that live in the society and those messages are meant to, they understand the message and they act accordingly. I will say that I will just make a little parallel that we were at the time to be killed and put in a pit and put a concrete block above our those pits. And we, including myself, we were those that were supposed to be killed, put in a pit, and put a concrete block on, above ourselves. Now, in this context, the haters, the hate speech promoters, they only use the concrete block as an expression. You can't even report it to the Facebook, which is anyway very weak in combating hate speech on its network. You can't even report that. What is a concrete block? Only concrete blocks for you. And then you can't combat it through those channels. You can't really count on the judiciary in Macedonia, which is quite problematic still. And I don't know how long it will remain such. And then what you do? We need to act ourselves. We need to work day in, day out on promoting the counter balance to that. Not with hate, of course. Respond, of course, with positive messages, with love, and with strong determination for human rights and freedoms. And that's how, in this fight, we will see that our fight is also a fight against anti-Semitism. It also is fight against distortion of Holocaust. And I can give you hundreds and hundreds of more examples that you see. Maybe there are so many that you don't even recognize them. But be sure that whatever the size of this hate is being spilled in the public discourse, whether it's in the social media or in the classroom or in the coffee bar, it is again a very tiny part of the society. Radicals are quite visible, but they're not in majority. Or at least we have to be happy until they become one. That means that we have to be vigilant and committed, particularly if we come from the media sphere or the civil society. That is up to us to be decisive and to say stop. And we also need to know that there are well-paid, small think tank centers that work on promotion of these destructive messages. That's why we need to be more creative and more positive when we speak about fight against anti-Semitism and distortion of Holocaust. and be true to ourselves. If we are committed to human rights and freedoms defense, then we stay like that every day, not to make any concession towards anyone or anything. That would be all for now.
Thank you very much, Џабир. Thank you very much for your valuable ideas and insights. The second speaker of this panel is our CEO. Goran, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Џабир, for your introductory speech. I would like to start my speak with a quote from one of the prominent Jews from ex-Yugoslavia, the president of the Jewish community of the Federation of the Jews in Bosnia and Herzegovina, who, when asked, while we were together in Sarajevo on a summer academy of Holocaust led by Centropa, why there is no anti-Semitism in Bosnia and why there is no anti-Semitism in Macedonia, comparing to Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia, his answer was quite sobering for me. He said, well, you see, the antagonism between the Croats, Serbs, and the Bosniaks in Bosnia is so big that nobody gives a damn about us Jews. And I was like, oops, maybe he's right. The antagonism between the Macedonians and Albanians in Macedonian society is so big that nobody gives a damn about us Jews. We are not on the radar. So when we started developing this institution, we discussed that the main purpose of this institution should not be just a museum per se, that people come here and visit the museum and see the exhibition and then they leave. The main goal is to create educational programs and activities for kids, how to combat modern days of hatred, discrimination, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and of course, Holocaust denial or Holocaust distortion, because Holocaust is not a statistics. Nevertheless, in this 8 years since we have been established as an institution and opened the permanent exhibition, hopefully this year in March, I've come to many graffitis which display the xenophobic society within Macedonia. What does it mean, Čista Macedonia? Does this mean that Macedonia should be eco-friendly society or clean from everything else but the Macedonians? Do we have a name here? The signature is Mickey, and the eye is with swastikas. We have graffiti, which is in Bitola, the middle one, about two people living together, but then they were crossed and swastika was written beneath it. Then we have the neo-Nazi symbols used by the president of the Macedonian World Congress, SS 1488. We all know what SS means. 14 are the numbers, are the words, which means we must secure the existence of our people and a future for our white children. 88 means Heil Hitler, and he used it in a public speech when speaking against the erection of a monument of the Albanians in Skopje, and in favor of building a cross at the same place or in a very near proximity. In front of the museum, in front of the church, the oldest church of Skopje, you can buy magnets of Hitler and Mussolini without any problem. And when I spoke to the person who sells them, he says, those are the most sellable items. So I said, is it a bit odd to sell it in front of the church and in front of a Holocaust museum? And the answer was, don't ask for it. I said, fine, I will not ask for it. Then the Jewish cemetery in Bitola, the oldest Sephardic cemetery in the Balkans. Many times they were desecrated, and on the top there is a small pillar on which you have the swastika to your left. Then we have the columns of the Portuguese synagogue, which were displaced after the war, and now they're being used as an entrance to the park. In Bitola, of course, they're repainted in different colors, and of course you can find the swastika symbol. The Israeli ambassador put a plaque marking that these are the columns from the Portuguese synagogue. Now they're repainted, and swastika symbol, you can find it on it. A school group, April Fool's Day, when James Bond is sitting with Hitler, they're 7th graders. They were in the same class with my son. One is dressed as Hitler,
Does he know? No, he does not know what he's doing. Do his parents know? For sure they do. Do the teachers know? For sure they did. And what did they did? They did nothing. The kid stayed in school the whole day. When the school classes were over, he went back home. Nobody said anything about it. And of course, the conspiracy theory. The House of Rothschild and the Greeks against Macedonia. This is the most used theory about the Jews, how they are destroying this country and working against this country. And because of this, when the Desorosization campaign started several years ago, the Jewish community and the Holocaust Memorial Center were under attack. They were asking us to speak with Soros and with others to stop Macedonia's succession to EU and to prevent changing the name. Then they said that the Holocaust was an invention by the Rothschild and the Rockefeller families, that the Jews were gathered by them in some camps to be taught how to steal the wealth of the world. That Holocaust never existed. And at the end they said, if you don't immigrate within 10 days, you will be liquidated one by one. So that was the trigger for the Holocaust Memorial Center and for the Jewish community to start the initiative in front of the government of the Republic of Macedonia to change the criminal code. Hopefully, the criminal code was accepted by the working group within the Ministry of Justice, and now it's in front of the government. So the anti-Semitic behavior, glorification of National Socialism, Holocaust denial, and usage of National Socialist symbols are going to be penalized by the criminal code. And we thank the OSCE who also participated in writing the articles that we have submitted into to the government. So hopefully within this year we will have the criminal code being adopted within the Macedonian parliament. So let them dare speak openly about Jews, about Holocaust denial or distortion of Holocaust or spreading anti-Semitic behavior. What is also important is that it's not going to be limited only on social media or in the media itself. It's going to be included public speeches, sports events, distribution of flyers, leaflets, brochures. Hopefully, what Georgia, the printing house Georgia is doing will also be, in a sense, restricted. We cannot ban of selling books. Nevertheless, we need to see the content and why it is being distributed. And as of types of laws, the Nuremberg laws and then the final solution to the Jewish question was introduced, and then the camps were built. And then the killing started. Killing started end of 1941. But the process was since the early 30s, dehumanizing certain group of people that they're menace and evil to the society. And we will be much more happier, healthier, and have much better society if we exclude them from our neighborhood. So I think that the civil society has much to say. It is not being done enough within the civil society in confronting and combating anti-Semitism and Holocaust distortion. By that, you don't help us Jews, you help the society in general, because anti-Semitic statements are not only offensive towards me, it's offensive to all of us. Because many people who we spoke with who had anti-Semitic statements and supporters of National Socialist ideas, we said the Jews were first in the line, Slavs were next in line. Did you know that? And they were like, oops, we didn't know that. Forming such societies of pan-Slavic National Socialist movements is quite embarrassment for the society. Obviously, we and the educational system is not doing enough to prevent this kind of behavior in our neighborhoods and in our own country. So I will conclude with this. I don't think that, no. So we can continue.
Thank you very much, Goran, for this very inspirative presentation. And I think that we can see from the developments the situation ongoing, and there's always a potential for growing antisemitism in this respect, and the educational system plays an important role, as we already emphasized. So our colleague, Professor Mladenoski, will focus on the current challenges in combating antisemitism in the educational system. Thank you.
Actually, the last sentence of Goran is bridged to my presentation, but I want to talk about it, which is educational system and civil society connected to education all around Europe, because I represent also one European organization, which is called Europe, which unite basically history educators from all around Europe and those who teach the subject of civic society, so-called. And I want to start with the many recommendations and declarations made by very important international organizations like UN, EU, OSCE, Council of Europe. They produce thousands of declarations and recommendations to the governments, especially to the governments. Yeah? And majority of the governments signed them. But this is the theory. What is happening in the practice? Do they implement them? Obviously, not all of them very successfully. Otherwise, they will not establish very close cooperation with civil societies. Because obviously, education system in any country is very robust, very slow for changes. And because of that, they opened a lot of space for involving civil societies in dealing with that kind of problems in any society. This phenomenon of anti-Semitism is nothing new. The new is that is reviving again, is going even more, to be even more visible, thanks to the, especially thanks to the new modern way of communications, the social networks and so on. But if you're talking about the region where we belong here, let's say Western Balkan, this is the newest name of this region. I never liked that name because it suggests something wild, yeah, like Wild West. But we are not such a wild in comparing with, or more wild, in comparing with some other regions in Europe, where especially far left, far right political parties grows rapidly. Some were taking the power, and even support the speech of hate, and some of them even start with hate propaganda, which is even more dangerous than hate speech. Yeah? Of course, everything started with hate speech. Even the first hate speech of Hitler, we know how that ended up. The first hate speech that he delivered was in 20s, but many other years after that, we know what's happened. Here in the Western Balkans, unfortunately, we have a tendency of rehabilitation of some historical persons with a very black background from the past. I will mention some of them. Our colleague Betty from Bulgaria, she already mentioned General Hristo Lukov. We know about that march, but maybe something that we didn't know is that they start to take over also the celebration of the National Day of Bulgaria. So they don't celebrate only the general, they start to take over the National Day of Bulgaria, which is not connected with them. And they organize huge, enormous march of 10,000 people last year. And they will going to repeat that this year. Let's mention the rehabilitation of Dmitry Ljotic, the leader of the right-wing party during the Second World War in Serbia. Or Milan Nedic, the prime minister of the Serbian during the Second World War. Should I mention the names from Croatia? There is plenty of them. With the very, where they go through some kind of process of rehabilitation. Not very often that process is supported by the government or political parties in mentioned countries. If we compare Macedonia with those in the region, in a way we can be satisfied, let's say. We are not on that level of anti-Semitism as our neighbors. But education has a meaning of prevention, you know. It's a preventive system in any country. There is another system which should punish the anti-Semitism movement and so on, because my attitude is that we need a zero tolerance about hate speech, hate crime, hate propaganda, and anything that can destroy the society where we live. And not only our society. Here in the Balkans, we are very connected, you know. So a problem in one country means automatically a problem in the neighboring country. And because I'm coming from the education, I would like to share something with you, because I'm provoked by discussions before that we should start with ourselves. I believe that most of us have fly with the commercial flights, with the plane, and you always go through the procedure of safety procedure. Yeah? In a moment, the lady or the guy will say, in the case of losing the oxygen, the mask will drop from above you, and they say, if you're traveling with a kid, put your mask on yourself first, then to your kid. When I hear that first time in my life, I said, oh, it must be wrong. You should help the kid first. But no, there is and I would like to compare that with the education. We as a teachers, we as educators, we should start from ourselves. And I'm not sure that we in our society, in neighboring societies, we do that. We don't starting from ourselves. Otherwise, the incidents like this one that we saw, I don't know in which occasion was that photo of James Bond and... April. 1st April, okay. Or sometimes, I know about the situation, it was a big scandal in Belgrade a couple of years ago when in the school was playing the role play. Okay, half of the students are Nazi soldiers, half of the students are prisoners, Jews. And the kids become such a deeply involved in that, they continue to play that out of the school, after the classes. I mean, it become real. So that's why I'm saying that I'm not so sure that we put the mask to ourselves first, you know? So we should do that, how to put that mask on to our self first. I mean, I don't see any other solution than long life learning, you know? Same constant education of the educators first. Otherwise, if they are not educated, it's better not to educate anybody. They can make more damage than the help in the educational system. I don't say this only for Macedonia. I can freely say that in the name of the whole region where we belong and parts of the Europe, because I have that kind of overview of what's going on as a president of the European organization, and we're talking about it, yeah? I mentioned that the educational systems everywhere are very slow. They don't react very effectively, and they are not able to recognize first, because if you work in prevention, first you should be able to recognize the situation. No, education systems usually react after something happened, but then it's too late. Yeah? Then it's too late. And we as a civil society, when I say we, I mean those which are present right now, and I see some of them in the public, plus many others, they need to work in close cooperation with authorities in this country, which is not the case, especially in the educational system. It's not the case. Whenever we propose something, some programs and so on, they have difficulties to accept that. First to understand it, second to accept it. I will give you an example that next week I will go in Bratislava. OIC will organize a big event with high-level representatives about dealing with the anti-Semitism. But the idea of the conference is how to connect and to use the power of civil society and how to closer cooperate with OSCE in fighting anti-Semitism. Obviously, they address first official educational systems everywhere. Obviously, that doesn't work well. I don't say with zero results, but obviously not what they expected. And now there is a situation to invite us as a civic societies to discuss and to offer our services. Because, you know, civil society here in Macedonia, in the region, very often is seen by the authorities as somebody, enemy is too difficult word, competitive, but not as a partners, which is a shame. Together we can do much more. If I have a time, maybe some short ideas that we are doing all the time. It's a part of our job. Anti-Semitism is not something that you do through the project. It's everyday life, everyday work in your classroom. It should be a cruise curriculum mentioned all the time, you know, because in Macedonia we have two words for education. We divide the education in two parts. We said obrazovanje, which is education directly, and vospitanje. For that vospitanje, I don't have a proper English word. It will be something like upbringing or, you know, about the moral, about your behavior everywhere in the society and so on. And in our situation here in Macedonia, education about the knowledge only, who, when, where. That's what they get in the school. They don't get nothing more. Actually, they don't learn. They remember. But what should they do? They should develop skills for the life, which skills can be based on moral, based on the mutual understanding, based on the critical thinking, of course, based on multi-perspective approach of the things, dialogues, and things like that. But unfortunately, it's not visible that in our system. And I can freely say, because I am born here, 35 years ago, I finished my secondary school, something like that. I don't see big difference when I was a student and now when I am a teacher. I mean, in the system. If something happened, it's not positive, it's not the result of the system, it's the result of the private initiatives through civil society, and so on. So I hope that I give some kind of overview of the situation and what we are doing. And unfortunately, I mentioned a couple of times, if we are doing together, in the cooperation with the institutions, the results will be much higher, much better than what we have now. And maybe the last sentence is that we still cannot find the right way to fight with the internet literacy and social medias, because I know what is going in the classroom, I can understand what is going in the families, but I don't understand as a teacher what's going on the social networks, which are mainly closed places of youngsters. So we don't know what's going over there and what kind of hatred they spread, or somebody try to involve in the kind of activity. So we are still unarmed about it. But if we work together, we can find a way to deal with that and to fight it.
Thank you very much, Professor Mladenoski. And last but not the least, Tamara from Telma TV.
Media always have the last word. Before I start, I want to say that I am honored to be here to speak on this very important issue about Holocaust, issue that changed humanity. And I will focus on the role of media in the fight of combating the hate speech and anti-Semitism. and we can talk about that if we don't go look in the past. So more than 70 years ago, propaganda in the media were one of the main tools in the hands of the Holocaust creators in carrying out the genocide against the Jews. With hate speech and spreading lies about what happened in concentration camps channeled through the media, the Nazis did the biggest crime against one nation in history. It was a huge lesson for the future, for the power of the media and the impact that media have on the public opinion. Today there is no person who is not aware of it. This led to the adoption of international human rights documents defining and putting in the frame of a legal framework of hate speech, anti-Semitism, and all other forms of intolerance towards religions, races, and any other diversity. The democratic capacity of society today is measured by the tolerance to diversity, freedom of speech that does not pass the thin line between that right and the denial of rights of others, but also through the role of the media in the fight against all kinds of discriminations. There is a law in Macedonia that defines and penalized hate speech. Nevertheless, despite this, we are witnessing that some media have crossed the line between the freedom of speech and abuse of that right. Over the years, we have seen the spread of especially nationalism, religious and political intolerance, hatred towards certain groups of citizens, such as the LGBT group or Roma community, as the most common form of abuse of freedom of speech in the Macedonia media. There were also cases of anti-Semitism. Such messages were mostly hidden or camouflaged through attacks and negative presentation of one person or group of persons, but with emphasizing of its or their ethnicity. A recent example of it is published on one Macedonian internet television exactly 2 months ago for closing the offices of Open Society Foundation in Turkey by George Soros, entitled, I will quote, "The famous Hungarian Jew is spending billions for dividing nations." The same stories was published in with the same title in the few other internet portals. The media community reacts on such negative appearances in the media. The condemnations came from professional journalist associations, the Ethicot, the Agency for Audiovisual Media Services, but unfortunately, those cases did not have their resolution through the justice system in Macedonia. Despite such isolated negative examples of hate speech and anti-Semitism, it must be emphasized, I will emphasize that the mainstream media, traditional media in Macedonia are fighting against this hate speech and anti-Semitism. An example of this are the news articles published in the relevant media in Macedonia, condemning the case of drawing the swastika on the public place in Prilep exactly 1 year ago, and in Kumanovo a few months later. But the relevant media in Macedonia recognized and know what kind of hate speech and anti-Semitism, and know what kind of damage they can cause in society. But their fight against those negative phenomena and influencing public opinion in that way become more and more difficult with the spread of social networks and internet media. When we talk about media, I must say that public often make no distinction between the mainstream media, behind which stand editorial policy, all team of journalists, editors who are part of the system of self-regulation, which are part of the, but also respond for the contents that is published by at the Agency for the Audiovisual Media Services, and internet sites without impressum, blogs behind which is often just one person who are not accountable to anyone about what they're publishing. So social networks, social media are the gray zone through which hate speech, xenophobia, antisemitism is spreading today through false news and misuse of photos and videos. Research showed that 47% of citizens in the country get information from TV media, and the same percentage get information from portals and social networks. Clear example of the abuse of social media for the constant spreading of hate speech and antisemitism is the portal Durinka, who in 2016 published false information about Holocaust and spread hatred towards the Jewish community. Unfortunately, that passed without reaction by the public prosecutor. The very last example of the abuse of internet media in the country is the recent discovery of all networks of sites, Macedonian sites, that produced false news created by a man from Kumanova, through which he spread hate speech and xenophobia to certain groups and religions. Although the Criminal Code of Macedonia in Article 394 regulates the work of spreading racist and xenophobic material through computer system, so far there are only a few cases of charges. But I will go back to the mainstream media and their role in the fighting of hate speech and anti-Semitism. Although they are fighting against those negative phenomena, we must be self-critical. I speak in the name of the media, and I must say that the struggle is mainly conducted instantly after something like that it's happened. It is more like a extinguishing fire rather than preventing it through the constant and systematic information and creating of public opinion about the damage and threats that hate speech, anti-Semitism, xenophobia can cause to the society and democracy. As an example, I would like to point out that although today we are marking the Holocaust Remembrance Day, in the past days in the media in Macedonia, they didn't dedicate part of their programs to remember on Holocaust, to remember what hate speech and anti-Semitism can do, to remind of genocide of one all population that happened in Europe more than 70 years ago, in which the whole Jewish community from the Macedonia was wiped out. When 7,144 people from this piece of land, just because they were Jews, ended up in the death camp Treblinka. We remember them on the day of their deportation on March 11, which is certainly not enough if we want to send the message that never and nowhere should happen again. Thank you.
Civil Media